This is Basket Case Clubs, CPR Group's podcast where we turn basket case clubs into showcase clubs. G'day, Steve, and hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Basket Case Clubs. Steve's chuckling in the background. I think every time I say that, he still expects me to say Basket Case Clubs. Is that right?
Yep. Expecting or hoping. I can't wait for the day that you do it.
You're just going to break in.
It's going to happen.
You did it.
Yep.
Well done.
Yep. And that's the take we're using too. Dear.
Yes.
Another week.
Another week, yeah. And I worked out that it's been 9 weeks, or this is week 9 of isolation. It's fascinating how, I was just talking to somebody earlier and said it's fascinating how we've become used to living like this. And my daughter went back to school this week because the poor thing's in grade 12. And she's all moping around. I just want to be at home again. You know, I know that there are some people who've been really champing at the bit to get back to school, but she is a self-directed learner and has really enjoyed that extra time that she's not in transit to and from school or making and packing a school lunch. She's been outside exercising and getting fit and practicing her music, getting all her study done, of course. But it's going to be a real shock when we all have to get back into the car and the train and the tram and the bus and the ferry to be spending time in transit again instead of just getting ready for a meeting and being at the meeting.
Yeah, I just this afternoon had a video chat with a client, and I'm in the office today because I had a couple of things to get done in here, and it was a great excuse to put a nice shirt on and to shave and to, you know, do my hair and actually feel half respectable. And she was still in her pajamas. So, and I said, I'm really not judging you because that's been normal life for me for the last few weeks. And it is going to be really hard to break that mold. What is excellent about this way of living and working, though, is that if you're able to, you know, like your daughter is and like we and our team are able to apply yourself and work remotely and, you know, maintain that connection through daily or regular video hookups with your team or your manager or, you know, the people with whom you're regularly working in close proximity, you can achieve such great efficiency enhancements simply by not sitting in the car, on the train, on the bus. You know, as soon as you finish your day's work, you're at home, you can cook dinner.
Yep.
And I think that some of that lifestyle stuff is going to be really hard to readapt from.
I don't think we will. I reckon that it's going to just become part of a lot more workplaces. You know, we've had a lot of people working remotely for ever since the business started. And so it's been actually really easy for us to step into doing it like this. But I think a lot of businesses will now take a new approach where having that flexibility for people to work at home because they're going to be able to deliver, get the work done. Okay, so you're 8 hours at work or 7.5 hours at work instead of 10 hours at work, including transit and time getting ready and time getting home and stuck in traffic. And we'll all benefit from that. However, I do have I know that you've had a few face-to-faces already and you've been bragging about it. I've got my first one coming up. I'm seriously considering putting a nice shirt on, a tie on, a jacket, and a pair of trackies and Ugg boots. Just because it's normal. What do you reckon? Will I get away with it?
That would be so funny. Yes, you would get away with it. I think you'd get a lot of kudos. That would be really funny. And everyone driving next to you, even when you pulled up at the meeting, they think, gosh, he's well dressed.
And they'll forget at the meeting, and then I'll stand up from behind the table.
Oh, that's right.
See my Simpsons Uggies again.
Guy's a clown. Yeah.
Oh, no. I've only got to open my mouth for people to remember that.
I reckon you should do that.
So 9 weeks in, and it's fascinating that we finished our webinar series on dealing with the COVID-19 shutdown last week. And now is exactly when we're starting to talk about the ramp up. So this is the moment that I've really been looking forward to start to talk about getting ready for kicking off again in Australian sport. So the theme that we really want to get across tonight in this episode is what's it going to look like and how can you be in control of what it looks like? a lot of clubs, as we saw right at the very beginning, and I kind of had a bit of a cynical go at the media. What, me having a cynical go at the media? On a few occasions, I did curb my rants. If you follow me on social media, when I had to get behind the keyboard, but for those who heard about it on the phone, it was far less curbed than about seriously these crappy clubs who can't get their act together, and they're complaining about this. Like, this is just it. There is always a reason, you know. We've had disasters, we've had bushfires, we've had floods, we've had cyclones that have stopped organisation. We've had sinkholes open up on playing fields, for crying out loud, because they're built on dumps. So there was always something that's going to stop clubs from being. There is always the risk of something happening that can stop a club from having a season. So be ready for it. But the clubs who are the worst off, who were the worst off going into it, may be the worst off coming out of it. But the theme for what I really want to get across tonight is that they don't have to go back to the chaos that it was.
And so many clubs fall into that trap of doing things the way that they've always done them. This period of downtime should be a great circuit breaker for that. And I mean, we are seeing clubs, we're seeing state and national sporting organisations challenge their ways of doing things. Only yesterday I spoke with the president of a national sporting organisation who was explaining that they have just had their first online meeting. So this is an organisation with representatives from all over the country. Yeah, spend tens of thousands of dollars every year on travelling to be in the same spot for meetings. They've been forced into trying the online meeting thing, and unsurprisingly, loved it. No, of course they won't. They said, this is great. We're going to have all this money to spend in better ways.
Program delivery.
Exactly.
Yeah, marketing.
So this is a really good, and from the outset, you know, we've been talking internally and with clients about the fact that there'll be some lasting silver lining of this shutdown. There'll be organisations that are forced into new ways of doing things. And I think that if nothing else, that time gap will help to act as a circuit breaker, or should certainly present an opportunity for groups to change the way that they do things when they reactivate, or, you know, more importantly, start now to think about how they can be doing things differently in the lead up to that reactivation. It's exciting, and clubs are now hearing, you know, some dates that, you know, the state government has put on different stages of reactivation, and whether those dates will be the dates on which those changes take place remains to be seen, because we might see some spikes in transmission that mean that the dates get pushed back. But what I'm really fearful of is that groups, you know, who maybe haven't made the best use of this downtime now are going to be running around like blue ass flies trying to play catch up, because we're hearing announcements being made about reactivation, and they're not ready for that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and then they're going to have all of the burden of having to get shortened seasons up and running, and they could have been thinking about that. Anyway, crystal ball and hindsight are all wonderful, but you know, we don't have one, and the other one is always 2020 vision. So what's step number one, Steve, for clubs to, what sort of stuff should they be pulling together right now then?
Where we're seeing more information released on what a COVID safe plan should look like. Obviously, we're having the discussion ourselves, planning to reopen our office in the coming weeks. And that means that we're going to need to be compliant with state and federal government health authority directives, and clubs are going to need to do the same. So if clubs haven't already started to do some research and find out what sorts of inclusions they should have in their COVID safe plan, and that's going to depend on the type of sporting activity that that each of the clubs deliver, the other ancillary stuff that they've got going on as well. So, you know, do they have bistros? Have they got an area where people congregate before and after games? How are they going to deal with their cleanliness, you know, accessing change rooms and things like that? There's some great direction coming out of the AIS in terms of Sport Australia, in terms of reactivation strategies, and, you know, the sorts of activities that can happen under, I think it's stages A, B, and C, they've called it.
Yep.
So there's information out there, and really we're not talking about stuff that is outside of common sense, are we? We're talking about cleanliness. We're talking about keeping your distance from other people and not sharing equipment. So it's not difficult stuff. But really, I think if clubs haven't started to pull that stuff together, now's the time. And it's a great task for a person or a small group of people who are hearing talk of club reactivation and getting back out on the field or getting their kids back out on the court. It's a great way to re-engage with their members, is to find a team of people who are happy to pull together the club's COVID safe plan.
Yep, good point. And you can split it up, I suppose, all right, you can do the COVID safe plan for the canteen operations. You can do the COVID safe plan for dealing with our change rooms, for the refs room, for the first aid room. The AIS framework for rebooting sport that you mentioned is in A, B, and C, so it's in 3 stages. What's interesting is that by the time we get to level C, we're still nowhere near a full complement. So we've got 100 people. So even... I can't really think of a team sport. Well, you could have the majority of a netball club training together. Yep. You can't have an AFL club training or having a game day with 100 people. You can't have a BMX club with 100 people, because that's 100 people. That includes riders, coaches, gate starters, berm officials, finish line officials, people in the nominations hut, people in the canteen. Did I say parents?
Not to mention all the slackers who aren't doing anything. Yep. Just watching.
Barflies. So it is going to be limited. But what we're seeing, and this is something that we predicted in coming into the restrictions, it was phased. So we went from no restrictions down to 500 very quickly, and then from 500 to 100 very quickly, then 100 to 10, then 10 to 2, then 2 to just stay at home.
Yep.
We'll see, and the IAS framework demonstrates that this is the case. We will see what looks like an unwinding of that. It's just that the time gap between each of those increments will be much longer. And it turns out that the time gap looks like 4 weeks each or thereabouts.
Yep.
So what is probably likely to happen is that the next level, that might be a level D, or it just might be a C subsequent and then a level E. And we don't know what no restrictions will ever look like. And we really shouldn't have no restrictions. And especially if that means when you go to the dunny, wash your freaking hands.
Mm-hmm.
when you sneeze, maybe don't do it on the people who are around you. So
do you know, this has highlighted this whole focus on washing hands, hand sanitizer. Even at schools, before my kids were sent home to do their schooling, before the schools were shut down effectively, every day they were doing hand washing classes. You got to do it for 20 seconds. You got to do it like this. You got to get in between your fingers and on the backs of your hands. And I mean, my kids are pretty good at cleaning their hands anyway. They certainly don't do it for 20 seconds ordinarily. But that huge focus on cleanliness, it has been great, but it's highlighted for me how poor people's hygiene is. You go to a public, you say you go to Suncorp Stadium to watch the football or the Gabba to watch the cricket, and you'll go into the dunny, and as you walk out, you'll see people who've come straight from the toilet area, not stop at the hand washing area, and
grab the door handle.
I know. And I mean, it's.
And there's me with my elbow and my foot, and then they'll just wait quietly for somebody else to come in. Thank you, and then smooch out.
No. I use the paper towel to grab the handle and then quickly throw the paper towel into the bin.
But what if the bin's on the other side of the room? Then you got to stand there with your foot holding the door open, crunch the paper towel up. Hopefully it's wet enough to stand to a ball. Then
I wait for someone else to open the door for me. Would you mind?
But we digress.
Yeah. But it's. I think that real focus on cleanliness is going to become common, and clubs are going to need to pick up their act, for the main part. Clubs that maybe haven't had a lot of in-your-face cleaning going on, and maybe clubs that have been relying on volunteers to do that crappy job that they might now need to engage a professional cleaner for. Hey, good time to be in the cleaning business.
Here's a story for you. I'd only just thought of this, given that we're talking about the Dunnies. I went to a meeting at a
Gosh,
sports
this is
club.
concerning. Go
I
on.
went to
Yeah.
a meeting at a sports club, and I was hijacked. This is in February this year, maybe even early March. I could look at my calendar, but it was literally just before the shutdown.
Okay.
And I remember in my report back to council after being that, I kind of got hijacked. Like I was supposed to meet with a couple of people, and then there was a cast of thousands, and the agenda had changed. And I had to be very. That's a good question that I shall take on notice at the meeting.
Mm.
But this is there's cricket there. There's AFL's not there anymore, but they have been. There's rugby league, rugby, and touch. So it's a fair, and a lot of school sport gets played there as well. Anyway, so they're all talking. I thought, oh, okay. Anyway, I'd been to other meetings and hadn't had a chance to stop, and it was about 200 kilometers from home. So I'd been driving a lot, so needed to take a bit of a tinkle. So anyway, I went to the bathroom, and straight away I went, well, this is not very inviting. And I just had this feeling about the place. Now the place is old, but there's no reason that they couldn't have been looking after the place. No tiles on the floor, just dirty, obviously not cleaned properly. One of those basins that smells like the one at Nana's house used to smell like 50. Well, I'm not 50 years old, but it probably is just old rusty hand basin. Now, the toilet door didn't lock. There was no toilet paper. Lucky I was only going number one. There was no toilet paper. The hand basin had no soap. It had one rickety old rusty tap, and then no paper towel. Now, I'm only just thinking about that because we're talking about hygiene and how this needs to just be standard. There are hundreds of people going through this joint every week, and none of them have been able to clean their hands properly.
Yeah,
Some of them probably looked at the basin and gone, not touching that.
Well, my hands are going to be cleaner if I don't wash my hands in that basin. That's right. But you didn't come back into the office that day and say, gosh, you are never going to believe the poor standard of hygiene at this club because it's too commonplace.
Well, I did go back to council and say, I'm surprised.
Oh, good.
This place is.
These people need a shake-up.
Yeah, after telling them that I was hijacked, getting in there and saying, there's no excuse for that. I'm not a bogan.
Yeah.
And I'm also not I'm not a super clean freak. Well, despite what my family will say. But Mum was laughing the other day when she said, "Oh, we knew you wouldn't need new soap or hand sanitizer. We know one in the glove box, one in the console, one in the front of your computer bag, one in your desk drawer, one in the second drawer, one next to your bed, one in the." Yes, I do.
She made that comment to me too. Yeah. If you run out of hand sanitizer, speak to Michael. But so often when we're talking with volunteers about meeting some statutory requirement for a document, there's a mindset of, can we just access a template and put our name on that? So I'm thinking child and youth risk management strategies, whistleblower policies, really important documents that need to be tailored to the needs of an organization and its operating environment. Yet they just want to whack their name on a document to tick a box. I reckon, and what's been highlighted just in my own personal experience through this shutdown, is that we've done a really good job in Australia and maybe it's, more particularly in Queensland where we are based, of dobbing on each other. So when people aren't doing the right thing, that's being reported. So I don't think that clubs are going to be able to get away with not having suitable, overt, right in your face cleanliness practices, good hygiene practices, and, demonstration of what they're doing to meet the provisions of their COVID safe plan. So that's a really important consideration. This is not just a document that people should have, clubs should have to have their name on it and to tick the compliance box, but actually a document that they're going to need to live and breathe.
Yeah. And hopefully they will, but I think that really highlights the point for these to be simple. If they're too long, they won't get read. So they need, and some of the stuff that I've seen from Safe Work Australia has been really good and really instructional. So there's a 2-page fact sheet that I was looking at yesterday that you can't go wrong. Just, I mean, it is all
Yeah.
common sense stuff, but to be able to work through it almost like a checklist so you know you're not missing things is really helpful. And everybody needs to play a role, because it shouldn't just be up to those few volunteers, you know, the SEP, the same 8 people that you talked about last week who do everything. It should be able to be shared around. So when we get back into the office, our COVID safe plan already says, when you get to your desk and leave your desk, it's up to you to do the cleaning of that desk daily, because the
Mm.
frequency goes from weekly to daily for the horizontal surfaces. So it's up to
Yep.
you to do that, because we're all in this together. It shouldn't be Corinne's job to wander around the office and clean everyone else's desk. We all just,
Yep.
and then it's literally, you know, I clean my desk down every day, and it
Mm.
takes a minute, maybe 80, 90 seconds. It doesn't take long. But
Yep.
then I know that I'm comfortable. I know that if I put my lunch down on my, well, I will have a plate, but I know that if I put my food down on the desk, I know that it will be okay. I know that if I put my hands there and then scratch my face, that I'm not going to catch whatever was left on the desk. So I think
Yep.
that to share the workload around will be good, but it is a really good chance to take stock right now and say, let's get back to it in a really good way, and not just try and rush straight back into doing everything like we did. So that's
Mm.
all of the management stuff that we talk about. And there's a lot of business stuff that I'm really looking forward to getting into with you on the podcast that we talk about all the time, but I'm really looking forward to exploring that in a practical sense through this medium as well. So take all of those leads, starting with cleanliness, if you like, and don't just rush back to
Mm.
getting things the way they were.
Yeah, and people are going to be more receptive now, foreseeably, to change and to doing things differently than they otherwise would. So, given that lead time, that break that we've had from our club operations, that the mums and the dads and the kids playing themselves have all had, and the fact our lives have really changed a lot since this time 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago. um, People are ripe for change. People are ready to see things done a little differently. But I also think that this is a great opportunity for clubs to challenge how to challenge their level of service too. We've been saying all through this crisis, some clubs won't survive. The strong clubs will. Some clubs won't. Whether that means that they merge or amalgamate with some other organisation, whether that means that they simply wind up and all their members go elsewhere and their assets are distributed to some other not-for-profit entity with the same or similar objects. Some clubs aren't going to survive, and we now need to see clubs, I think, really step up in terms of their planning for the future and their service delivery, so that they can meet what will be quite significant expectations of people who've been cooped up at home and want really good service delivery.
Yeah.
I've been saying for the last probably 10 days or a couple of weeks, as we've started to hear more and more talk of reactivation, reopening clubs and so on, people are going to be really keen to get out of the house. They're really keen to socialize. They're really keen to do something. Give them an opportunity to do that at your club.
Mm.
Make your club the hub of your local community that it already kind of is by default. And we've touched on this a couple of times in our discussion, the importance of sport to society in Australia. So capitalize on that and make your club the place where people go post lockdown to socialize and to
Because they
get
want
that.
connection, real
Yeah,
connection, not
that's
just
right.
connectivity.
And
You know, we've had connectivity, but connection, human connection is what's
yeah,
missing.
yeah.
Yep.
And if they're going to spend money, no better place to spend it than at your club.
Yeah, yeah. So I know that you want to talk more about volunteering and dealing with what will be the new way, that, especially as sport starts with small numbers. But before we do, the final point that I want to make here is about mindset. So we talk about mindset a lot, and the
Mm.
context here is very specifically about how to focus the thinking and the time that you've got from now to when we actually get going. There's a thing that you can do that will be really good. And if you do the opposite, it will really break your ability to achieve or overachieve right now. And it's where you focus. So if you focus on looking at and I've got these level A, level B, level C lifting of restrictions from the AIS open on my screen in front of me, I can look at that and I can say 100, we can't do anything with 100. We can't open the canteen. We can't have the parents here. We can't. And they're focusing on the can'ts. If you focus on what we can not do, then you're missing the opportunity, because within these little cells here in level B and level C, from when we can start on Saturday, Steve, today's Wednesday, this will go up tomorrow. It's only a couple of days away. I'm looking at that and saying 10 people, okay, we can't go full contact. Look at what we can do with 10 people. So focus on what you can do given now known restrictions. The difficulty was like when I was drawing the parallel about being scared of the dark.
Yeah.
We can see the monster now. We can see the monster. I can stop being scared and I can start to work out how to defeat the monster. That's it. So focus on what you can do and maintain that positive mindset that I've been beating this drum for, I've worked out 9 weeks now. And now is the chance to make it all come true with positive messaging. And when you hear the negativity from parents, get them involved. Say, all right, now let's focus on what we can do. You know the restrictions. It's nothing we're doing here. We're not going to break the law and we're not going to put anyone's health at risk. Help us focus on what we can do. And you don't have to do that from here. We can, like you said before, we can have people working on our COVID safe plans remotely. We can focus on what we can do within the known restrictions as we're planning as well.
Yeah. And it's and that mindset is so important for as an administrator or a key volunteer, president, someone who acts as a face of a club. It's so important that the members of the club see that person thinking that way and acting and behaving that way too. If those people to whom others look in an organization are, focusing on the can nots and are feeling really down and out because, we can't just get back to the way things were, others are going to feed off that too.
Yep. So, let the positivity grow. And like you said before, don't leave all of this to the 11th hour. Get in and do what you can now, because it's going to be madly busy from Saturday, when we can start to focus on what we can do, and we're starting to work within those parameters. And then only another few weeks after that to having 100. There's a lot of stuff we can do. Focus on that, but don't wait until the end.
Yeah. And so I think what you were maybe going to suggest that I wanted to talk more about is the volunteering stuff and that SEPs, same 8 people. There's never been a better chance to change the way that we're delivering our services in not just relying on those 8 people who've typically done everything, but to, when people get back involved in the club, for those 8 or however many people in any particular organization that might be, for them to actually use this as an opportunity to engage other people and to, actually ask for help and to not just fall back into the trap of doing all the things that they've always done. And one of the things that you and I have spoken about is that drop and run mentality, which has been a real barrier to engaging parents, particularly as volunteers. The mums and dads who understandably are really busy in their lives, and they might be dropping several kids to several different training locations, like our poor mum and dad.
Children, for those that don't know.
So our mum and dad were taxis.
I thought you were going to say they were busy, and I was going to say, yes,
at least for the years leading up to our
taxis. Saturday morning was bedlam. Half that way, half the other way. See you at dinner.
So they couldn't stick around and volunteer to any great extent at any one of those locations because they had 6 kids to run around. But
they still volunteered. They did what they could do. Dad used to rake the weeds in the creek in his tinny during the week. If he'd have an RDO, then he'd be out doing his volunteer work then, which is far more valuable than being an extra pair of hands in the canteen.
Yep, that's a good point. So don't, however, just ignore the fact that this drop and run issue, challenge, barrier to volunteer engagement, when you look at that AIS document, it highlights the fact that we're going to see less time in change rooms. Get in, train, get
drop
out.
and run.
Yeah.
But
that's kind of what it means. That's right.
It's becoming the new normal.
Exactly.
Well, at least for this next foreseeable 8 or 12-week period.
Yeah. And don't see that as a challenge though. Like you just made the point, volunteers can help at different times. And, whether that's preparing your planning documents or funding applications or, being involved maybe physically at the club when training isn't happening. I still, again, with this positive set of glasses that we typically wear as optimists, reckon that, people are going to maybe be more willing to help out than they have previously as well. And, they want to contribute to the benefit of their club and the services it provides. So, but clubs need to set up a business model and an operational structure that can account for the different ways that we're going to be operating
and engaging
for the
volunteers.
Future.
Yep.
Yeah.
What a lovely positive note to end on today.
Yeah.
Yes. I just wanted to get that into the mix as well, that we do talk a bit about doom and gloom, and in having listened back to some of the previous episodes, I just want to put over all of this is we do that because we can see opportunities for greatness.
Yeah.
We got great people, we got great volunteers, great systems. All you need is just a great mindset and a great get in and get it done attitude.
And a good opportunity to make change.
Yep. Yeah. And what better opportunity than right now?
Yep.
I'm sure that post-production I'll hear some music starting to ease in the background here, Steve. So it's time to say thank you for another wonderful chat. Always a pleasure.
Likewise, thank you for taking the time to do that post-production. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Steve. Talk to you next time.
Good night. See you, everybody.